afternoon and welcome to an all-new hour of Law and Crime. I'm Vincent Hill. We got a lot going on today. Of course, Cheyanne Harris in Iowa. She is on trial for the murder of her infant son, little Sterling. We're expecting that trial to go live here any moment. I can see a live feed over to my right on my screen. We're expecting that to go on. Also, you know, we've been covering the Charles Merritt murder trial in California. Now, this is a death penalty case. He's accused of killing the entire McStay family, who went missing back in 2010. Now, that jury will not be reporting today. We're actually going to hear a motion hearing whether the testimony of a QuickBook employee, Ryan Baker, is actually allowed in that trial because he received a call from someone claiming to be Joseph McStay, saying they wanted to cancel their QuickBook account. However, the call came from Charles Merritt's phone. And of course, the prosecution has said that this case is about money. You can see the defendant, Charles Merritt, on your screen. They said this was about money, and this testimony could be crucial, of course, to the prosecution in that case. So we're waiting for that to happen. We're expecting that to happen around 1:30 Eastern time here in New York. Of course, that trial is in California. But while we wait on the Harris trial, we're going to take a recap of some of the highlights from the Cheyanne Harris trial.
And as I walked in the apartment, I could visualize Tony Fredericks, who's another first responder, and MEI, and she was in the bedroom ahead of me.
What did you do?
I walked into the apartment, and to my left was another bedroom, and in that bedroom was a male and a female, adult male and adult female, and a young child, a girl. And they were talking. I do not recollect what they were talking about. I was focused on the incident, and so I walked past that room and approached Tony, and she kind of filled me in of what she had observed up until that point.
So let me back you up a little bit. You said that you were walking towards the bedroom where Tony was, correct?
Correct.
And in a different bedroom you saw two adults and a child.
Correct.
How close are those bedrooms to each other?
The bedroom that the adult and the child are in is right here, and the bedroom that Tony was in is right next to it. So, feet.
What day were you at the house?
I believe it was August 30th of 2017.
Okay. So at that time, Sterling was 3 months and 30 days old.
Correct.
Did she provide you any explanation as to what had happened?
She did not. The only thing she told me, I asked her when she last seen Sterling alive, because it's one of the questions on the MEI form is when the patient was last seen alive. And she told me that she last seen him alive at 2000 hours, which is 8 p.m. the previous night.
Now, you said 2000 hours. Did Cheyanne Harris use the phrase 2000 hours?
No, she said 8 p.m.
Okay.
Sorry, we use military time.
So in speaking with Cheyanne, with the defendant.
All right, she was voted number 6 in the top 10 defense attorneys of 2018. She is Ann Bremner, joining me right now from California. Ann, how are you this afternoon?
Great, how are you? Good morning.
Well, I think the jury is coming in the Cheyanne Harris case, but I want to ask a quick question here before we have to toss to a break. This diminished responsibility. Now, listen, I remember the Twinkie defense back in California. Right. So for our viewers that aren't versed in the law as you are, explain really quick this diminished responsibility defense.
Well, and of course, that was the case with Mayor Moscone, where Dan White said he had so many Twinkies that made him unable to form the requisite intent to kill. And of course, if that vitiates out of the elements of the crime, the defendant walks out the door, which is unlike insanity where they go in for treatment. So in this kind of a case, it's a hard defense for the defense because it takes out intent and it results in acquittal. And there's a lot of elements that are necessary for it. But that's basically what they're trying to say here. This is such a gruesome crime. This is such a terrible thing that happened to this baby. No mother in her right mind, and that's the key, would do that.
Right, absolutely. And you made a good point. It could be this diminished responsibility defense causes her to get away. Do you see that happening here in this case?
I was just thinking this morning, I mean, the more gruesome and horrific the crime, the less responsibility with respect to intent, often jurors will give to especially a mother. On the other hand, this one's about as bad as it gets. So I just don't see that happening here. With day after day after day, the baby in the swing and the maggots and everything else, you have to look at that and say she couldn't have had that diminished capacity every single one of those days.
Right, absolutely. You said it best. She is a mother, and it is her responsibility to take care of that little one. And stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. That jury is back on the stand. We expect live testimony in Cheyanne Harris right after the break. Stay tuned to the Law&Crime Network. All right, we're hearing testimony from Dr. Michael O'Hare. He's a postpartum expert. And I want to talk about something he touched on here. We got about a minute before we have to go to break. But he talked about these two questionnaires. Now, I'm having trouble. How do you gauge someone's mental well-being by a questionnaire versus some other type of examination?
Exactly, and that's exactly probably what the jury's thinking right now. Just give her a questionnaire. A, is she going to be accurate? But B, the only assessment really is they use like an MMPI or something like that to look at issues of whether someone's malingering or somebody, is in touch with reality or things like that to assess their suitability, I think, for further testing and diagnosis. But you know what? It's just a form. It's just a test.
Right.
It's just in writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and hear more of this testimony from Dr. Michael O'Hare. Stay tuned to the Law&Crime Network. We'll be right back. All right, still hearing testimony from Dr. Michael O'Hare. Again, he's a postpartum expert, and I want to talk about this PTSD and the sexual assault. Listen, I suffer from PTSD from the military, from being in law enforcement, but that doesn't necessarily mean I would leave my 4-month-old son sitting in a swing for several days, almost a week, until he actually died, and he was found with maggots around his body and his diaper. What say you? Is this enough for this defense right here?
I don't think so. And by the way, I'm sorry you've gone through that. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's so important because we really are talking about people like you, like vets. My brother's an expert in PTSD. He's a psychiatrist. So is my dad. But and what he deals with are generally vets. And the DSM used to have parentheticals about the kind of events or experiences that cause PTSD, and they're catastrophic, like what you've been through. They talk about Holocaust survivors and things like that. Mm-hmm. And they talk about sexual assault they did, after those parentheticals. So that having been said, I was thinking exactly the same thing you were just saying, which is, even if she has PTSD, how in the world does that cause her to do what she did with such neglect, which bordered on intent? And the other part of it is, are there any studies out there that say that PTSD can lead to this kind of behavior? I'm not aware of any. I mean, it's kind of like throwing everything but the kitchen sink into this, right? With the postpartum depression, the meth, the PTSD, et cetera.
Right. And stick around. We'll have so much more of this live testimony when we return to the Law&Crime Network. Stay tuned. All right, the cross-examination of Dr. Michael O'Hare has begun by the prosecution. And, Ann, I want to talk about something the prosecutor just pointed out there. Normally, something like PTSD or depression affects every aspect of your life. For instance, I don't like crowds. I won't get in elevators. You ask anyone that knows me, I'll take the stairs 10 flights because it does affect every aspect of your life here. So how do you get around the fact that she was out doing other things but not taking care of her child?
Well, that's brilliantly stated, and that's the problem with the defense. I mean, it's just it's a hit or miss, but it's basically selective, of the diagnoses and the elements of the diagnoses, like right here, which is depression, postpartum depression, except for certain circumstances. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I don't think it'll work here. But, of course, this is up to the jury to decide. We don't know what they're thinking. Of course, the father of this child, Zachary Cohen, was convicted of the murder of this little baby Sterling. Now, he says that she was the primary caregiver, and he was out working, and she should have been taking care of the child. So what do you say to that?
Well, and I think, of course he's going to say that, but he was convicted and he's serving life in prison, which is the required punishment in Iowa for this. But the fact, at least in his own defense, but the fact of the matter for her is that she's she's got all these different excuses, but, the PTSD, she says she's a victim, so she wants to present the jury really as a victim herself, and that her victimization led to this. And I don't know how that's going to work. I used to prosecute sexual assault cases for many years, and I've defended cases, and I represent victims civilly.
And hold that thought. We have to take a quick break. We're going to have more live testimony. Michael O'Hare, the doctor, is still on the stand. Stay tuned to the Law&Crime Network. We'll be right back. All right, while they decide if they're going to redirect that line of questioning with this Dr. Michael O'Hare, still with me, Ann Bremner. And I want to talk about this text message that we just heard about where Cheyanne was texting Zachary, the father of Sterling, and she says, "I'll call you after I'm done cleaning up our damn son." Now, to me, that text message sounds more of someone that's angry than someone that is suffering from PTSD, depression, or anything like that. What say you?
I totally agree. It's like, when I heard that, I went, oh, ouch, for the defense. I mean, she's mad, and it's like he's not sharing responsibility, and she's the one having to do all of this. And so it doesn't help the defense at all. Right. And we also heard, about her telling this Dr. Michael O'Hare how she was tired of hearing little Sterling cry. She put him in this back room. She was tired of changing the diapers. To me, this just sounds like someone that when you can see little Sterling there on your screen. This is such a tragic case. Such a tragic case. To me, this sounds like a mother that was just not ready to do her duties, not because of something that she had going on mentally, but she just didn't want her to do her duties. Exactly. And I think the jury can hear that loud and clear through this defense expert. And the fact is, she was posting pictures on Facebook of her dog and in fashion clips. Through all this, I thought that was really damaging, too. And the other thing is, the DSM historically shouldn't be used in a forensic setting. And one of the signs of malingering is referral by a lawyer. So here's this quote-unquote expert who comes in, hired by the lawyers with these 3 diagnoses. And it kind of flies in the face of what we just heard factually about this very neglectful mom, an angry mom.
Right. And stick with us. We'll have so much more to come from this trial in Iowa. Cheyanne Harris on trial for the murder of her little son, Sterling. We'll be right back to the Law&Crime Network. Stay tuned. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. The Cheyanne Harris case has just gone on a short recess. We'll have more of that live coverage as soon as they go back live. Still with me, Ann Bremner. And I want to talk about this text message that we were talking about just before the break. Quoting here, "I'll call you after I'm done cleaning up our damn son." That's a text Cheyanne Harris sent to Zachary Cohen, the father of Sterling. So playing devil's advocate here, listen, I'm parents. Of course, my kids are adults now, but I've been frustrated a few times with my kids, and I've said things or maybe even sent a text message that would probably come off like this as well. So do you really think that text message will weigh heavy on the jury, especially if those jurors have kids and they can understand, listen, I've been upset with my kids too. I've been tired of hearing my baby cry as well.
Well, that's a great point. And then the fact is, she didn't say she wanted to kill him. She didn't say she wasn't going to change the diaper. She didn't say she was going to leave him on a swing for a week. So I think every parent's been frustrated. You're exactly right. And she's probably one of them. That's what the defense will argue. Yeah, absolutely. But how do you go from being frustrated to your baby being found with maggots in his diaper? At 4 months old, he is so helpless. He can't talk. He can't show emotion other than crying. So how do you go from, yeah, she's an angry text message to little baby Sterling is found like that? How do you get there? The thing is, in this case, you need multiple diagnoses. You need somebody that's very disturbed. You need somebody that can't help herself. You need somebody that's got postpartum depression, which we heard in the testimony. A lot of celebrities talk about they having it. She's got these multiple layers of defenses, which have everything to do with her mind and her inability to kill that baby intentionally or even negligently. It's like I've said before, women are diagnosed and men are demonized in child abuse cases. And she's one of them with 3 diagnoses. Right. And speaking of, again, Sterling was found in a swing with diapers around his body.
Experts say he wasn't changed for over a week. We want to hear testimony from Tony Friedrich, a registered nurse who was a first responder of Little Sterling. Let's take a listen.
Yes.
What did you do?
So I pulled up, and I pulled right up, and I saw a man, a woman, and a little girl, and I got on my car and I went running up to them and said, "Where's the baby?" Nobody was showing any emotion, and the man goes inside, and I said, "Show me." And so he took me inside. We walked in, and we went to the back bedroom. He took me to the back bedroom, and it was dark, and it was stuffy, and there was a stench of urine there. I was looking for a crib. I couldn't see a crib. I said, "Where's the baby?" And he said, "In the swing." And it was dark. I said, "We've got to get some lights on in here. Turn the lights on." And he flipped the switch, and the lights came on. And he walked away, and he muttered something, and I don't know what he muttered.
What did you see when the lights came on?
Well, you could see the swing. It was facing an outside wall in the corner. And so then I went over so I could see Sterling, the baby. Found out that's what his name was. And to do my assessment, look, listen, and feel, his eyes were fixed and dilated, staring straight out. He had blood around his mouth, and I went to check a brachial pulse on him, and his arm was stiff and rigid and cold. All of his extremities were cold. His little feet were cold. His hands were clenched in a fist, and he wasn't breathing, and his clothes were like crusty. Yeah.
Did the room have windows in it?
There was blankets over the one window that was in there, so that it didn't show any light.
What did the room feel like?
It was hot. It was stuffy. There was the stench of urine.
What did you do?
Well, after I did my assessment and realized that I couldn't do anything, I called back into the sheriff's department and asked for the sheriff to come and another medical examiner.
Why did you call the sheriff's department?
Because this was not right. Something was not right here.
All right, that is actually Tony Friedrich. Again, she's a registered nurse. She was first responder there when little Sterling was found. Still with me, Ann Bremner. Ann, I want to talk about how she described Sterling's body when she got there, but more importantly, the fact that she says nobody was showing emotion. Now, when I was in law enforcement, a lot of the testimony that we would rely on were the people that got there before police officers, especially trained professionals. So you have this trained professional. She's a registered nurse. She's a first responder, and she says no one was showing emotion. The room was dark. It was stuffy. There was a stench of urine. So there's a lot going on there, and I think personally that gives the jury a picture of exactly what happened that day. To hear this first responder say how she found little baby Sterling. What say you?
I agree completely. It's just a snapshot, and it's a very bad one of exactly how the people were acting that were most responsible for little Sterling's welfare. And she has no bias. She has no dog in the fight, so to speak. She has empathy, of course, and that description, those little closed fists and the cold extremities and the blood in the mouth and the crusty clothes will stay with all of us, including the jury, forever.
Yeah, and I think the jury really perked up when they heard that testimony. I don't know if any of the jury there are parents, but even if you're not, to see a little 4-month-old child found in a swing with not only maggots, but to hear the testimony that his eyes were actually opened and his fists were clenched. I mean, if that doesn't set into you, then I think you have something going on emotionally as a person. Again, her defense, that intoxication, that Twinkie defense that we've talked about, Ann, that, she was diminished in her responsibility for that. We're going to have more live testimony in the Cheyanne Harris trial as soon as it gets off of a recess. Until then, we'll be back having a recap. We'll be right back here on the Law and Crime Network. Stay tuned.